Hello everyone, welcome to Sujitra's online reading session. We are going to see the remaining part of the story, episode 2, where the two birds are conversing with each other and the young man happens to listen to the conversation. Let's see what the other bird says about King Solomon's lost ring. The other bird answered, "He will have to seek help from the witch maiden, who will doubtless be able to put him on the right track. If she has not got the ring herself, she knows well enough who has it. But where is he to find the witch maiden?" said to the first bird. "She has no settled dwelling, but is here today and gone tomorrow. He might as well try to catch the wind." The other replied, "I do not know certainly where she is at present, but in 3 nights from now she will come to the spring to wash her face, as she does every month when the moon is full, in order that she may never grow old nor wrinkled, but may always keep the bloom of youth." "Well," said the first bird, "the spring is not far from here. Shall we go and see how it is she does it?" "Willingly, if you like," said the other. The youth immediately resolved to follow the birds to the spring. Only two things made him uneasy. First, lest he might be asleep when the birds went, and secondly, lest he might lose sight of them, since he had not wings to carry him along so swiftly. He was too tired to keep awake all night, yet his anxiety prevented him from sleeping soundly, and when with the earliest dawn he looked up to the tree top, he was glad to see his feathered companions still asleep with their heads under their wings. He ate his breakfast and waited until the birds should start, but they did not leave the place all day. They hopped about from one tree to another, looking for food all day long until the evening, when they went back to their old perch to sleep. The next day the same thing happened, but on the third morning one bird said to the other, "Today we must go to the spring to see the witch maiden wash her face." They remained on the tree till noon, then they flew away and went towards the south. The young man's heart beat with anxiety lest he should lose sight of his guides, but he managed to keep the birds in view until they again perched upon a tree. The young man ran after them until he was quite exhausted and out of breath, and after 3 short rests, the birds at length reached a small open space in the forest, on the edge of which they placed themselves on the top of a high tree. When the youth had overtaken them, he saw that there was a clear spring in the middle of the space. He sat down at the foot of the tree upon which the birds were perched, and listened attentively to what they were saying to each other. "The sun is not down yet," said the first bird. "We must wait yet a while till the moon rises and the maiden comes to the spring. Do you think she will see that young man sitting under the tree? Nothing is likely to escape her eyes, certainly not a young man," said the other bird. "Will the youth have the sense not to let himself be caught in her toils?" "We will wait," said the first bird, "and see how they get on together." The evening light had quite faded, and the full moon was already shining down upon the forest, when the young man heard a slight rustling sound. After a few moments there came out of the forest a maiden, gliding over the grass so lightly that her feet seemed scarcely to touch the ground, and stood beside the spring. ring. The youth could not turn away his eyes from the maiden, for he had never in his life seen a woman so beautiful. Without seeming to notice anything, she went to the spring, looked up to the full moon, then knelt down and bathed her face 9 times, then looked up to the moon again and walked 9 times round the well. As she walked, she also sang a song. Then she dried her face with her long hair and was about to go away, when her eye suddenly fell upon the spot where the young man was sitting, and she turned towards the tree. The youth rose and stood waiting. Then the maiden said, "You ought to have a heavy punishment, because you have presumed to watch my secret doings in the moonlight. But I will forgive you this time, because you are a stranger and knew no better. But you must tell me truly who you are and how you came to this place where no mortal has ever set foot before." The youth answered humbly, "Forgive me, beautiful maiden, if I have unintentionally offended you. I chanced to come here after long wandering and found a good place to sleep under this tree. At your coming, I did not know what to do, but stayed where I was, because I thought my silent watching could not offend you." The maiden answered kindly, "Come and spend this night with us. You will sleep better on a pillow than on a damp moss." The youth hesitated for a little while, but presently he heard the bird saying from the top of the tree, "Go where she calls you, but take care to give no blood, or you will sell your soul." So the youth went with her, and soon they reached a beautiful garden where stood a splendid house which glittered in the moonlight as if it was all built out of gold and silver. When the youth entered, he found many splendid chambers, each one finer than the last. Hundreds of tapers burnt upon golden candlesticks and shed a light like the brightest day. At length they reached a chamber where a table was spread with the most costly dishes. Afterwards the youth and the witch maiden conversed pleasantly together until a woman dressed in red came in to remind them that it was bedtime. The next morning the maiden asked him whether he would not like to stay with her always in this beautiful place. As he did not answer immediately, she continued, "You see how I always remain young and beautiful, and I am under no one's orders, but can do just what I like." The youth could not but be tempted with the beautiful maiden's offer, but he remembered how the birds had called her the witch, and their warning always sounded in his ears. "Give me a few days to consider before we come to an understanding." "Why not?" answered the maiden. "Take some weeks to consider, if you like, and take counsel with your own heart." That was the reply that she gave. And to make the time pass pleasantly, she took the youth over every part of her beautiful dwelling and showed him all her splendid treasures. One day the maiden took him into a secret chamber where a little gold box was standing on a silver table. Pointing to the box, she said, "Here is my greatest treasure, whose like is not to be found in the whole world. It is a precious gold ring. When you marry me, I will give you this ring as a marriage gift, and it will make you the happiest of mortal men. But in order that our love may last forever, you must give me for the ring 3 drops of blood from the little finger of your left hand." When the youth heard these words, a cold cold shudder ran over him, for he remembered that his soul was at stake. He was cunning enough, however, to conceal his feelings and to make no direct answer, but he only asked the maiden as if carelessly what was remarkable about the ring. She answered, "No mortal is able entirely to understand the power of this ring, because no one thoroughly understands the secret signs engraved upon it. But even with my half knowledge, I can create great wonders. If I put the ring upon the little finger of my left hand, then I can fly like a bird through the air wherever I wish to go. If I put it on the third finger of my left hand, I am invisible, and I can see everything that passes around me, though no one can see me. If I put the ring upon the middle finger of my left hand, then neither fire nor water nor any sharp weapon can hurt me. If I put it on the forefinger of my left hand, then I can, with its help, produce whatever I wish. I can, in a single moment, build houses or anything I desire. Finally, as long as I wear the ring on the thumb of my left hand, that hand is so strong that it can break down rocks and walls. Besides these, the ring has other secret signs which, as I said, no one can understand. No doubt it contains secrets of great importance. The ring formerly belonged to King Solomon, the wisest of kings, during whose reign the wisest men lived. But it is not known whether this ring was ever made by mortal hands. It is supposed that an angel gave it to the wise king. When the youth heard all this, he determined to try and get possession of the ring. A few days after, they were again speaking of the magic ring, and the youth said, "I do not think it is possible that the ring can have all the power you say it is." "Do let me try," said the youth, "whether I can do these wonderful things." The maiden, suspecting no treachery, gave him the magic ring. The youth pretended to have forgotten what to do and asked what finger he must put the ring on so that no sharp weapon could hurt him. "On the middle finger of your left hand," said the maiden, answered, laughing. She took the knife and tried to strike the youth, and he even tried to cut himself with it, but found it impossible. The youth did so, and found to his astonishment that with a single blow of his fist the stone flew into 1,000 pieces. Then the youth bethought him that he who does not use his luck when he has it is a fool. "Now," said the maiden, "you are invisible to me until you take the ring off again," because he had put the ring on the invisible finger. But the youth had no mind to do that. On the contrary, he went farther off, then put the ring on the little finger of his left hand, and soared into the air like a bird. When the maiden saw him flying away, she thought at first that he was still in play, and cried, "Come back, friend, for now you see I have told you the truth." But the young man never came back. Then the maiden saw she was deceived, and bitterly repented that she had ever trusted him with the ring. The young man never halted in his flight until he reached the dwelling of the wise magician. The young man thanked the magician for his directions and promised, should they succeed, to reward him. But the magician answered, "I have profited so much by the wisdom the ring has taught me that I desire no other reward." Then they parted, and the youth quickly flew home through the air. After remaining in his own home for some weeks, he heard people say that the terrible dragon of the north was not far off,